Well, hi everyone. I'm John Retland, and here is a look back at Hulk Hogan's WCW title run from 1994 to 1995. I'm basically doing this because it's almost at the 2-year anniversary of me doing a video about his ego trip in 1993 WWE, and I wanted to talk about some things that I hated in this respective title run. Now, that being said, not all of it was bad, but boy, WCW went back to like peak WWE just with a lot of talents that were a lot older. And Hogan did draw a little bit for him. I mean, he did give them quite a bit of press, but boy, to take a look back at the history of this, it's not going to take very long. I also encourage you guys to check out the Ego Trip video that I did. Check out the Rants playlist. It was done like early in 2018. Fucking hell, how the time flies. So with this, you go back to 1993 in WWE, and Hogan had, cashed in the Money in the Bank before Money in the Bank was ever a thing. Won the championship from Yokozuna, who had just beaten Bret Hart at WrestleMania 9. Hooray, WrestleMania 9, that terrible shit show. And then would hold the championship till King of the Ring 1993. Lose it to Yokozuna instead of putting over Bret Hart at SummerSlam 93, which he should have. He got out of his contract, he wrestled some in Japan, and then he went to film Thunder in Paradise. That show was great. Remember that show? You shouldn't. It was shit. But while this is going on, you then see what's happening with the WCW title picture in 1993. Barry Windham was NWA champion, dropped it to Ric Flair. And then the whole NWA disbanding thing happened and stuff like that. It was the International Championship and the World Championship. The International Heavyweight Championship was created, and Rick Rude won it by beating Ric Flair at Fall Brawl 93, holding it for quite a while, losing it to Sting, and then would get injured, suffer a back injury on a tour of Japan, unfortunately, and that would spell the end of his in-ring career. So Sting was holding it, and then you had Ric Flair holding the championship, beating Vader for the WCW Championship at Starrcade 93, while Hogan's doing his whole Thunder in Paradise thing, so he's not even in the company. So they got 2 different world championships in WCW. Sweet Christ, WWE copied WCW a lot more than I even could have possibly imagined. Now, the thing is, Flair, that match with Vader was absolutely incredible. Great, veteran versus big man match. And he held the championship for a while, wrestled Ricky Steamboat in a Forgotten Classic at Spring Stampede 1994. And during that time is when WCW announced that they were going to be bringing Hulk Hogan into the company. So, naturally, you would think that what WCW would do is do the match that WWE did not do at WrestleMania 8 when they had Hogan and Flair in the same company. Even though Savage versus Ric Flair was much better than Hogan versus Flair would have been, you still would have thought they would have gone with that, but that's because Randy Savage, yes, wearing the shirt for a reason, was always better than Hulk Hogan. I'm going to get into a little bit of that as this video goes on. So, they announced around that time that Hulk Hogan's going to be part of the company. This was well before Nitro, so they just had WCW Saturday Night, which was taped, at Disney MGM Studios. Hogan was given a lot of money for little dates and got a lot of creative control. They opened up the frickin' wallets and opened up everything to him. Now, to be fair, Hogan still had a lot of buzz around him. Yes, his WWE run did not end all that well, but he was still Hulk Hogan. For a generation of fans, he was somebody that, oh, we don't know wrestling. Wait, Hulk Hogan does it. And there you go. It was smart marketing by WCW to bring him in. Unfortunately, with that came a lot of people that shouldn't have come in. Now, one person that did come in that should have come in, Jimmy Hart. I was happy to see Jimmy Hart in WCW. Always loved Jimmy Hart. One of my favorite wrestling managers of all time. One of my favorite wrestling personalities. Still doing some meet and greets and stuff like that and everything, even at his age. He's been, he's great in Memphis, great in WWE, he was great in WCW, did everything that he could to the best of his ability, even when they had him in matches for absolutely no reason, but he was good at comedy. So, Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair having this build. Sting beat Rick Rude, right before Rick Rude would suffer the injury. He would beat him at, I believe it was Spring Stampede 94. And then would wrestle Vader. And he would win the champion, and he would, retain the championship there. And then Ric Flair challenged him for that while being the world champion. And the International Championship, those would fuse Clash of Champions in June. And then they were building Sting and Hogan. And they did a good job building it. It really did get a lot of pay-per-view buys, a lot of buzz, and a lot of press. And I will say this much. As much shit as I give Hogan, one, he leaned down, which clearly had nothing to do with him getting rid of the steroids in his body. Nothing at all. Everything to do with it. Not that he was the only one, but boy, it was really goddamn obvious. He probably also lost some weight to take pressure off his knees and his back from doing the leg drop instead of the axe bomber lariat that he used in Japan. And if you've seen any of his stuff in Japan, apologies for my voice, by the way, you would notice that he was working as a heel in Japan. It actually worked out pretty well. So they built up this match. Bash at the Beach 94. Pretty damn good stuff. They built up the whole thing during the pay-per-views. Built around that match. Pretty good card, pretty good undercard, though not everything was great. But quite a bit of it was good. And Sting and Flair had a great match. There was a lot of, ridiculousness and stuff like that. They had, Sherry out there, and she was doing some interference stuff. Then Mr. T gets Sherry, and Bobby Heenan has the classic line, he's kidnapping her. And just, I don't know why Bobby Heenan, even at his worst, how he was just so goddamn good. Even when he didn't care in WCW, he was just taking a paycheck. He was still fucking hilarious, because Bobby Heenan's one of the greatest of all goddamn time, if not the greatest of all time. In his roles. So, manager, color commentator, that kind of stuff. So, we get that match. We have Hogan win. Great match. We then go to Clash of Champions 28 in August of 94. They build up a match where Hogan ends up suffering a knee injury and gets counted out. So Ric Flair wins, so they're 1-1, but Ric Flair does not capture the championship. Then we go to Halloween Havoc 94. Steel cage match. Hogan's title versus Flair's career. Or maybe his career versus career. It was really fucking convoluted. It was ridiculous. Ric Flair puts his career on the line. Ric Flair loses. Mr. T is the special guest referee. Gets handcuffed to the ropes and still makes the count. Sherry interferes. Whole bunch of other stuff. There's this mask guy that attacks Sting. What the hell is the mask guy doing there? Oh my god. Suddenly, Hogan wins. And then suddenly, Beefcake turns heel. They had Bruce Beefcake turn heel. They couldn't call him Bruce Beefcake there. Brother Brudai, all that, and a whole bunch of other gimmicks that he got. Fucking Christ, Bruce Beefcake had a lot of fucking gimmicks in WCW and in WWE. That's another story. He turns heel. Bobby Heenan has a line, he has butchered the friendship. And there you go. He's the butcher. It's the butcher and the blade. Not that, but he had butchered the friendship. Then he joined the Dungeon of Doom that Hogan started feuding with. Kevin Sullivan's group of ragtag morons. Where Brutus Beefcake was a better worker than Kevin Sullivan, because Kevin Sullivan was always fucking rotten in the ring. Now, they build up to Clash of Champions 30. They don't do Clash of Champions 30 yet. They had Clash of Champions 29. I'm getting ahead of myself here. I wrote down some notes because this time period's a little bit fuzzy. He teamed with Sting, and teamed with Savage against Butcher, Sullivan, and Avalanche. Avalanche was, of course, Earthquake. Avalanche was just a little bit close to that, so they had to change him to the Shark. Apparently, Shark Avalanches don't have. I now need to see the Asylum do a movie called Shark Avalanche. If there is one, please tell me. I need to watch that movie. I need it now. So, they had a match, 6-man match. Cool. Okay, we're still building up all this stuff. And then we get Starrcade 94 main event versus the Butcher. Brutus Beefcake got to be in a Starrcade main event. That right there should have spelled the end of Starrcade. Now, nothing against Brutus Beefcake as a person, but for fuck's sake, as a worker, as a talent, you're going to put him in a Starrcade main event? That was fucking ridiculous. Now, I'm getting this out of the way because I didn't get a chance to do a retro review of Starrcade 94 because I simply was just so goddamn tired and everything by the end of the year. But my god, worst Starrcade main event. Worst. Period. And I've seen others, and even in the 2000s and stuff like that. This was worse. This was worse than the Goldberg Taser thing, they had against Kevin Nash, or Sting versus Hogan. That may have been the most, the worst hyped match. But this was the worst one, because Brutus Beefcake and Hogan working together, sure, it was a safe match, but it was a shitty match. Savage comes out and saves Hogan at the end. They do the poses, all that stuff, because Hogan had to keep Savage under his thumb because Savage was always better than Hogan, which is something that I may have said earlier in this video. That match with Butcher was absolutely terrible, but that's not even the end of it. He'd held the championship for about 6 months by this point. When we get to January, he teamed with Savage versus Sullivan and Butcher. because that feud still had to go on, the whole thing with the Dungeon of Doom and stuff like that. And then we get Super Brawl 5 versus Vader, which was a mess, an absolute mess. Vader at this point, I believe, he was U.S. champion, and then he would have to relinquish the U.S. championship at some point. And then I believe Sting and Ming fought over it. That's hard to say, but they feuded over that in the summer. So Super Brawl 5 was just a mess, but it wasn't that bad. It wasn't as bad as Uncensored 95, where he faced Vader in a non-title strap match. It was overbooked with, like, you know, guys being tied up and a masked guy showing up. Jimmy Hart had been tied up, and then wait a second, suddenly, you know, Arn Anderson's tied up, and the masked guy is actually Randy Savage, and I kid you not, this is how Hogan won. And I'll be doing a retro review of this later, but he won by dragging and interfering Ric Flair to all four corners to win. Ric Flair, who was not in the match, and he somehow won. Maybe they wanted to keep Vader strong. If so, why put Vader in the goddamn match? Because Ric Flair, his career-ending match lasted 3 months, 2 months. It was just fucking bullshit. It was absolute fucking bullshit. And it gets even better. It gets even better from here, believe it or not. We get Slamboree, where he's teaming with Savage versus Flair and Vader. Flair was, like, you know, practically human centipede to Savage and Hogan for about the first, you know, year and a half of their run. But that's because Flair could always work well with just about anybody. And yes, I was going to work a human centipede joke into this at some point. This tag match, it wasn't bad, but it was just extending a feud that no one really asked to have extended. And then he wasn't at Great American Bash 95. Hogan wasn't the champion. How dare the champion show up there? And I believe Savage and Flair had a match, which wasn't bad. Brian Pillman versus Alex Wright was actually the best match, and it opened the show because Alex Wright was a babyface getting booed, and Brian Pillman was starting to turn into loose cannon and getting cheered a whole lot every time he beat up Alex Wright. Cheered wildly. Fucking hell. Go back and watch that opening match. It's amazing. Brian Pillman's so sad. So sad how his life ended. His son carried on his tradition, though. So, Bash at the Beach 95. On an actual beach in Mike Huntington Beach. Yep, I was going to work that in also. And a steel cage match against Vader. It was messy. Vader, I believe, also, I almost said Sting. Vader also ended up separating his shoulder doing a freaking, like, elbow drop splash, whatever the fuck, off the ropes. But yeah, it was a steel cage match where the cage was so short that it barely came up over the ropes. Like, if you stood up on the ropes, if you stood up on the second rope, your head was almost above the goddamn steel cage. It was amazing. But Vader loses. Hogan even puts on the whole Mastodon helmet, you know, apparatus thing, and runs into Vader. He basically buries Vader. Vader did not benefit from feuding with Hogan, as did most people in WCW. No one really benefited from feuding with Hogan because he always had to get his win back. So yeah, that was absolute dog shit. And then it gets better. Fall Brawl 95. War Games. He teamed with Luger, Savage, and Sting versus Dungeon of Doom, which was Kamala, Ming, the Shark, which was, you know, John Tenta, a.k.a. Avalanche, a.k.a. Earthquake, a.k.a. Why did he get buried with so many bad gimmicks? He was Golga in the Oddies after losing weight. And Zodiac also, who was, you know, Brutus Beefcake in another gimmick. And that match was pretty goddamn silly and everything. It was ridiculous. It was what it was. It was 1995 WCW, which was much like 1995 WWE in that they would have good matches, but creative was absolute shit. And then it gets even better, because the culmination of this 15-month title reign is at Halloween Havoc 95. They're building up this whole thing about this block of ice, and suddenly something bursts out from it at the end of the Nitro just before Halloween Havoc 95. It's the Yeti, or the Yeti, as Tony Schiavone said, and it was absolutely silly. So, with this is what got ridiculous about it, though. They had two matches. Giant, you know, a.k.a. Big Show, versus Hulk Hogan in a monster truck match on top of the Joe Louis Arena, which I'm assuming was probably filmed the day before. I think it was, or, you know, a couple days before. But they had this, and it was stupid, because they're doing this and everything. This went on forever. There were monster truck things on top of this freaking arena. And then Hogan wins by pushing him out of the circle, and they had also explosive charges and stuff like that and everything and stuff. Why? It wasn't as bad as the Junkyard match. That No, Junkyard match was worse. But this was a Junkyard match, by the way, Bash at the Beach 1999, in case you're wondering what I'm talking about. It was ridiculous. In actual Junkyard, where people got hurt. I can't imagine how. So, we then get to the real fun, where Hogan and Giant are brawling, and looks like Giant's going to toss Hogan off of there, and then Hogan gets off and not like that, and has Giant up there and tries to save him, but oh no, Giant falls, and he falls and apparently falls to his death off the Joe Louis Arena into some water. I assume that's by there. I don't know geography very well in that area, but he falls into a lake or the ocean. Or he falls into the lake. He wouldn't fall into the ocean outside the Joe Louis Arena. That's not how bodies of water work. But he falls into some deep water and seemingly dies. Okay. So then a little bit later, Hogan comes out. He's all in black before the NWO, but he's feuding with the Dungeon of Doom and stuff like that. Remember, Kevin Sullivan's group of idiots. And then he's like, oh, well, this match won't be happening and stuff like that. I apologize for what happened to the Giant. Suddenly, the Giant's music hits. He's not wet. Hair's not wet. Nothing. He's fine. He gets in the ring. Apparently, he has supernatural spoopy abilities. And then him and Hogan proceed to have one of the worst big man matches that Hogan has ever had. We're trying to replicate the Giant, or, Andre the Giant versus Hulk Hogan. They even had the Giant being the son of Andre the Giant. It was terrible. The match wasn't any good, and then Jimmy Hart even turns heel inexplicably, easy for me to say, attacking the referee. But Hogan doesn't see it. The camera doesn't quite catch it, but it's like, holy crap, another camera shot did. Fans are pointing at Jimmy Hart, saying Jimmy Hart did it. And then Jimmy Hart attacks Hogan. Hogan being, unbeknownst to anything because he doesn't have a brain at all. And Jimmy Hart attacks him, and then, oh my God, all this is going on. Then the Giant does the bear hug thing, and then the Yeti comes out. It was Ron Reese of, later of the Flock. It wrapped in bandages that looked dirty and covered in shit. He was a mummy, not a Yeti. And then proceeds to get on the other side of Hogan, and it looks like they're DPing him right there. And if you know what DP is, you know what I'm talking about. It was the worst bear hug, double bear hug I've ever seen. It was terrible. It was rotten. Luger gets in at one point and attacks Randy Savage. So we have Luger going heel after people said that Luger was going to go heel for a while. And it was just an over-convoluted mess. And then, oh wait, all of a sudden the Giant walks out with the WCW Championship. They don't quite announce who wins because it was by disqualification. I guess Hogan lost by DQ because Jimmy Hart was in his corner and attacked the ref. But then Jimmy Hart says, I had it written in the contract that the title could change hands via disqualification, so the Giant's champion. And then they do this whole thing where they do that, and then they take that away, and then they go to World War III, where Savage wins World War III to win the vacant championship. But then Hogan has to take over the spotlight and stuff like that, and Savage only holds the championship for about a month. So Hogan wins it in dominant fashion over Flair at Bash at the Beach. 1994 has a series of matches that really weren't all that good, which was par for the course for Hogan at that point. And then finishes with being DP'd by the son of Andre, and also a guy in, dirty toilet paper. Peak WCW, ladies and gentlemen, and I wonder how that company ever turned a goddamn profit. Oh, wait, there was an idea stolen from New Japan about the interpromotional war with factions and stuff like that, and that's how it happened. Anyway, this title reign was absolute shit. It was just fucking shit. And that's a bit of a history on that stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Anyway, agree, disagree with what I said. Like, share, subscribe. Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. Randy Savage is always better than Hulk Hogan, and I'll see you soon.